and calm. And today, what we're going to work on is a kind of an interesting part. So, I like reading. And last night, I was reading this wonderful new book by Miroslav Volf, and he quoted C.S. Lewis in there. And C.S. Lewis said here, I'm paraphrasing. C.S. Lewis said, with companions we share an activity, with true friends we share a question. I love that idea, right? Just think about that for a second. With your truest friends, obviously share activities too, or your partner or your beloveds, whoever they might be, you're not just sharing an activity, you're sharing a question. And in that sharing of a question, boy, life really opens up. It's a beautiful idea. And I want to read for you just a little bit here because it fits right into what we're talking about in terms of this biblical story we're looking at. And it's this. So the biblical story of Abram is he's in one area, God calls him to another, calls him to the land of Canaan, becomes the promised land, becomes the current land of Israel. And so Abraham is considered the forefather of three great faith traditions: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. That's why they're all called Abrahamic faiths, because they come back to this story. And it's just beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful at a surface level in many ways. But you just go one step underneath into an internal sense to it. The story really opens up in miraculous ways. And one of the miraculous ways it opens up is this idea of that's what happens to us, that we're all making this journey. Now, we're all making this shift. We all have a time where we have to, quote unquote, leave home. That oftentimes is a physical leaving, and no matter whether we physically leave home or not, it's always a spiritual leaving, that we have to leave things to be able to return, if that makes sense. And it's interesting because in the biblical narrative, it's a real simple line. And we looked at this yesterday. And Abram took Sarai his wife and Lot his brother's son, and they left to go into the land of Canaan. So there's this leaving and these people leaving, and I think it's interesting to look at, folks. All right, so if our truest friendship, if our truest camaraderie, if our truest connectedness comes down to sharing a question, that opens up whole new layers of friendship, whole new layers of connectedness. Oftentimes I think what we think of is we think my friends like the things I like. Wonderful. I love having friends who I can watch football with. I love having friends I can do the things I like to do those things with. But thinking about it, like, don't we know that to be true, right? Even those friendships that are just sort of like just the fun watching football, having a beer kind of friendships. A lot of the time, those deeper ones that have lasted over the years, it's because there's a shared question that is subliminal, is quiet, that I believe probably for most of our lives remains unspoken. But that question is there, and that's why the friendship continues to grow and move. Now, what might that question be? Well, I'm not exactly sure what that question might be. I mean, you might have some ideas, and they might be ideas in terms of how might be ideas you would like to share in the chat. So thinking about a question this way: look at the root quest. Question, quest. A question creates a quest creates questions, or is driven by questions, might be a better way to say that. And that's where I feel like, oh yeah, like I feel that best. I look at I'm fortunate to have a couple really, really good buddies, some of whom probably are going to watch this sometime today. And I feel like we've all been on this very similar quest today. We've all been moving with each other on this journey for the blessings and the breakings of it. I know with the relationships of those who I deeply love, there's this idea of this quest, this idea of what we're moving forward with, this idea of how do we build a relationship that really has eternity stamped on it. That idea of real relationships are two angels walking each other home. I think that's just so spot on. And we know when we find someone who's on the same quest, and you think about it, like, how will this friendship work for somebody who's just on a different quest? They're just on to something different. You're going north, they're going south. That kind of relationship doesn't work. That kind of friendship doesn't work. It can be a companionship. You can share activities. You can share likes and dislikes. but it's not going to be at the same heart level. And that doesn't mean anybody's bad or wrong. I think, again, we need to remember that preferences are different things than right and wrong. It just means they're going a different direction. And that's so much the spiritual life, is finding those people who can join in a quest or questions. And maybe that's part of what drives small groups. Maybe that's part of what drives churches when they're working at their best. Maybe that's part of what drives, just to talk about New Church Live for a second. Maybe that's what we've been trying to do at New Church Live, is just this shared quest of how do we figure out what God looks like for this generation, for this in this new era. I don't know for sure, but I think it's a great thing to ask, and to sort of ask for a takeaway. Maybe even if you're married or you're in a serious relationship, have that conversation with your partner, saying, "Oh yeah, what's the question we're trying to answer? What's the quest we're on here?" And I think, boy, does that open it up, because once you do that, a lot of room for variety, a lot of room for different perspectives, a lot of room for growth, a lot of room just for stuff that I think is going to be super good. So that's the thought for today, folks. I hope that makes a lot of sense to you. And and just thank you so much for joining us today. And what we're going to do now is we're going to shift gears. So I'm going to be quiet for 2 seconds. And what we're shifting gears into is a time of meditation and prayer. And this is just a time where we just still our minds, still our hearts, get us ready for the day. So with that, friends, I want to start with this. I want to start with a big breath. And listen to the prayer bell. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends, let's give a little cheery hello to folks here who may have joined us. And again, I feel like we're getting ready for a big weekend here. Hopefully, you're looking forward to a fun weekend ahead. Linda, good morning to you. And Linda, by the way, that was a very, very, very fun meeting last night, as they all are. Very much enjoyed it. So thank you. And other comments here. Right. Jean writes, good morning. And good morning to you, Jean. Hope you're doing well. Patricia, great to see you joining us as always. Marcus, good morning, buddy. And Deborah writes, thank you. Very thought-provoking topic. And yeah, Deborah, it was kind of fun. Like, I read that thing by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is always so good. And it was just like, dang, how do people think up that stuff? And it's spot on. I mean, it really fits in well with thinking about how church, synagogues, mosques work. It's just interesting stuff. So, with that, my friends, I wish you all the very best. If any of you, by the way, Deborah sending her little note there reminds me, if any of you, by the way, do want to hop into a New Church Live small group, we do have one going on tonight at 8 p.m. on Zoom. If that interests you, feel free to shoot me a note. We're looking at a book, but you don't have to have read the book to join the group. They're fun ways to have conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed last week's. I'm sure thoroughly will enjoy tonight. So if that has any interest to you, warmly invite you to take part in it tonight. Just shoot me a note if that has interest. So friends, God bless you. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.